is there any truth to the theory that RDJ's Doom was Iron Man originally? Hey everybody, Colton here, and many of you have sent to the askcoltonnow@gmail.com email address that Alex Perez, a somewhat reliable leaker, perhaps more often than not, I don't know, I'd have to crunch those numbers, but that he has put out his February 2026 Q&A over on Circus is where I'm seeing it, and this one is for Avengers Doomsday and Avengers Secret Wars. So in this video, we're going to do Avengers Doomsday, and then we'll do another one for Avengers Secret Wars. So let's just jump into this Q&A. People submit questions, and Alex responds to them, seemingly with knowledge of Avengers Doomsday. So let's check it out. All right, the first question came from Hey Alex and Lizzie, thanks so much for hosting these. My questions are, will Peggy be a Doom witch? So that question is likely stemming from these reports and rumors that Doctor Doom is going to have like his own team of like Doctor Dooms, or like that they're in Doom masks and hoods, almost kind of like Doom bots, but that they are like servants of Doom. And there have been rumors that like Scarlet Witch is going to be one of them, and that maybe all of them are women, so maybe they're witches. And so this question is, will Peggy be one of those? Alex writes in response, it's more of a follower of Doom than a witch, but not because she's evil or anything of the sort. She just thinks that what Doom is doing will help her and her son to fix the current status of the multiverse, which is particularly the fault of Steve Rogers. Okay, so it is the Peggy that is with Steve. It's not like Captain Carter Peggy, I don't think. Perhaps she will become a Captain Carter type Peggy, like take the super soldier serum. But it's sounding like it's not the same Peggy who we know like from What If. It's the Peggy that is with Steve and has a son with Steve. And that, you know, like I've said many times, I don't think Doctor Doom is going to be like a mwahaha villain, especially in the bulk of Doomsday. A lot of our heroes are going to think, and I think the audience will think as well, that what Doom is doing is like the right thing. Like he will have a moral, like justified, logical argument for why he's doing what he's doing. And I particularly like hearing, and I misread that the first time around. It says, which is partially the fault of Steve Rogers. I think when I read it, I said particularly the fault of Steve Rogers. Okay, so partially the fault of Steve Rogers, the current state of the multiverse. Okay, so we know that, yeah, Steve created a timeline that perhaps he shouldn't have. I've said for a long time that I thought Endgame would have massive consequences that would be picked up on in Doomsday. Then we got the report that Doomsday is a direct sequel to Endgame. Then we got confirmation that Steve Rogers is back. So, you know, love hearing when I'm right. But okay, that's cool to hear. And I wonder if perhaps Steve is going to be kind of on Team Doom as well, because there was a recent report, and we did a video on it, that Steve Rogers is on that Fantastic Four rocket coming into Universe 616, which we saw in the Thunderbolts post-credit scene, and is a scene from Avengers Doomsday when the Thunderbolts see that rocket coming in, or the new Avengers see that rocket coming in, and that Steve's on there. And part of that rumor is also that Loki put Steve and Peggy and their son in Universe 828 because the timeline that he created, that splinter timeline of 616, was going to be pruned by the TVA. So Loki yeeted him over to Universe 828 so that he could live his life like in secret. So that's interesting to hear Peggy is going to have like a significant role. I remember reading a report saying Haley Atwell will have her biggest role in any Avengers film ever in Avengers Doomsday, to which I say, yeah, I mean, no shit. She doesn't have a big role in any of the Avengers movies, so that's really not saying much. But okay, let's move on to our next one. This one came from cosmicriver. Hi, Alex and Lizzie. Always a delight to get a chance to ask you questions. What is the main connection or thread between Agatha All Along, WandaVision, and Doomsday that you have been hinting at for the last few days? Okay. I hadn't seen that. Alex responded, it mainly has to do with the concepts of magic that are explored in those shows. As much as this film is heavily based on the multiverse, time, and science, a good portion of it really goes into exploring the supernatural. The Darkhold, the runes, the way Agatha absorbs magic, it's all relevant to something Doom does in Avengers Doomsday. All I can tell you is to beware the man who carries the word of God. All I can tell you is to beware the man who carries the word of God? Am I missing something here? We've got the Darkhold, we've got the Book of Vishanti. That had big, like, those were both in, the Darkhold was a big part of WandaVision. Book of Vishanti, Multiverse of Madness, to, like, combat, like, the Darkhold. Steve Rogers is a godly man. Are they saying something about the Bible there? Is Avengers Doomsday, is Doom, like, going by, like, some book? Does he have the Darkhold or the Book of Vishanti, and he's, like, saying that I'm going by this is the way to save the multiverse? If I'm completely missing something, like, from the comics there, please let me know. All I can tell you is to beware the man who carries the word of God. That kind of sounds like they're talking about the Bible. Do they have a book from the one above all or something like that? Let's reread this answer, though. So they say a good portion of it really goes into exploring the supernatural. That is a huge part of Doctor Doom. Yes, he's a scientist and has great tech and all that, but he's also a master of the mystic arts. So the Darkhold, the runes, and the way Agatha absorbs magic are all relevant. Maybe we're going to see Doom absorb some powers. That'd be pretty neat to see. All I can tell you is to beware the man who carries the word of God. Could that be a God Emperor Doom reference? We shall see. All right. Walker, or Rain, writes, "Hi, Alex and Lizzie. Always look forward to these. Is there any truth to the theory that RDJ's Doom was Iron Man originally, but was tortured by Kang and ended up believing he was Doom?" I hadn't heard that one, I don't think. There is no truth to that theory. In the same way that Chris Evans can play two different characters in the MCU with the same face, so can Robert Downey Jr. play Victor Von Doom. And just like how now we have a main Johnny Storm with Joseph Quinn, I'm hearing we'll eventually have another Victor Von Doom. And just like now we have a main Johnny Storm with Joseph Quinn, is he making an allusion to how Chris Evans also played Johnny Storm? I'm hearing we'll eventually have another Victor Von Doom. Well, yeah, I agree with that. We will eventually have another Victor Von Doom. I'm curious if Robert Downey Jr. continues playing the role after Secret Wars, or if that's when they recast. In the same way that Chris Evans can play two different characters in the MCU with the same face, so can Robert Downey Jr. play Victor Von Doom. That's kind of implying, Alex seems to kind of be implying there, that there's no multiversal connection between the two characters. But I've always said, I do not think that Doctor Doom, Robert Downey Jr.'s Doctor Doom, is going to be a character who was once Iron Man. I don't think that. I think that Robert Downey Jr. is playing a 100% Victor Von Doom. Doctor Doom was never Tony Stark, was never Iron Man. That's what I think that character is. What I have also said, though, is I do think he is a multiversal variant with Tony Stark Iron Man. What I mean by that is that I think that if you were to observe them, like if the TVA were to observe these two characters, they would have them categorized as a variant of the same multiversal being. Just sometimes it's Doctor Doom, sometimes it's Tony Stark Iron Man. I could be wrong, but that's what I think is going on there. Not that I think that Doctor Doom was ever Iron Man or anything like that, or that they split like at the point of the snap or something and he goes on to become Doctor Doom. No, I think that he's always Victor Von Doom, he's always Doctor Doom, but in other universes where time unfolded differently, perhaps there's an adoption angle or something, that he was Tony Stark Iron Man. I don't like the idea that, oh, they just happen to look alike. I think that's silly, especially in the multiverse saga, where choice has been the ongoing theme, where you're introduced to the concept of variance. Everybody, even my mother, who is, a casual fan, is going to assume, oh, so they're like, it's like a different universe version of Iron Man who is, this one's bad, though. Like, I think everyone is going to kind of assume that. I guess they could go the route of having Doctor Doom be like, I am not Iron Man. I am not Tony Stark. And I think that would be cool to have that moment, have that all be true, that yes, he is not Iron Man. He is not Tony Stark. He has no connection to that guy. But I still think it would be the case that in the multiverse, they would be considered variants the same way Victor Timely and Nathaniel Richards and Rama Tut and Immortus and the Centurion and Kang, they're all different people with the same face, but they have different names and different lives. Now, yes, in the comics, it's the same guy and having different lives throughout time, but in the multiverse saga, they are like different people, different variants who have different lives. I personally think we are going to learn that they have some type of multiversal connection, but I've droned on long enough about that. Walker Rain writes in again, will any of the projects coming out this year have any major ties to Doomsday? Alex responds, Vision Quest and Brand New Day are the closest things, but it's very, very light. Okay. We know Brand New Day, Tom Holland's Spider-Man and Mark Ruffalo's Hulk, both very likely not in Doomsday. But for what reason? Probably find out toward the end of the film or in a post-credit scene why they aren't there. Vision Quest, I feel like Vision Quest was something that was made during a little bit of a different era of Marvel, so maybe they'll shoehorn something in toward the end for Vision Quest to give it like a Doomsday connection, maybe. All right, Manglore writes, hey Alex, glad to see you back with Q&As. Was there any official info about Doom having an opening narration in the Library of Worlds in Avengers? Or was that just an idea thrown around or based on a fake leak? I'm going to have to read that question again. Was there any official info about Doom having an opening narration in the Library of Worlds, I assume in Avengers Doomsday, or was that just an idea thrown around or based on a fake leak? Okay. Alex responds, this isn't true. There was a concept of Doom having discovered the Library of Worlds, but in the same concept, he also discovered the Sanctum Infinitum from What If, the Nexus of All Realities, the Citadel at the End of Time, the Void, Limbo, and so on. Nothing was ever set in stone. Okay, so those are all just like multiversal places, like from the comics, and also we've seen them in the MCU some. That so he says that they thought about having him discover those. So like Nexus of All Realities, is that has to do with shit, what's his name? Not Swamp Thing. Man-Thing. Sorry. That has to do with like Man-Thing, where he was the guardian of that, right? And then you have the Citadel at the End of Time, the Void, Limbo. Yeah, these are all pretty much places outside of time, outside of the multiverse, between universes. Nothing was ever set in stone, he says. All right. I don't have much to add to that. I hope they have a cool introduction for Doom, explain the multiverse well, and I want them to get a little in the weeds with it and have fun and throw some stuff in there that super fans will appreciate, but you don't want to get too weird with it, because this is the type of film that you need the general audience to be able to follow. Ingala writes, hey Alex, we have been hearing for months and basically a year now that Doomsday is going to be the biggest movie Marvel has ever made in terms of scale. One thing that made Infinity War and Endgame feel so gigantic was that there was many plot lines, that there were all happening simultaneously throughout the movies. I was wondering if you could tell us the main plot lines that we will be following throughout Doomsday. For example, in Infinity War, there is Strange, Tony and Peter, the Guardians, Thor, Rocket, Groot, the Avengers, and Wakandans, and Thanos' plotline. Okay. Alex responds, good question. It's a bit more unified and cohesive this time around. Yes, there will be a couple of different teams, but they'll eventually get together for the film. That is great to hear, because yes, in Infinity War, we had Tony and Peter and Strange with Star-Lord and Drax and Mantis, and the Nebula came in toward the end of that, and they were all going up against Thanos on Titan. And then we also had, then in Wakanda, there was like Steve and Sam and Rhodey and Nat, and they were with T'Challa. And then we had Thor and Rocket and Groot come in after having done their own thing. So we saw some convergences But then those two teams never converged. They were separate the whole movie. And then in Endgame, we got them all together and like after the dusting. So half the characters were taken out almost. So I like hearing that, yes, we'll have that, because you have to do it this way. You have to have like different groups really. You can't have a movie where every scene has like 20 characters in it, I don't think. So it's good that you have the separate stuff. But I'm glad to hear that come the end, they all will come together and their plots converge, and that really they're all part of the same plot leading to the same moment. That's cool to hear. All right, CH2003 writes, "Hi, Alex and Lizzie. I really appreciate you guys taking the time to do these Q&As. With Doomsday, should we expect to see any of the cosmic entities since the multiverse is ending? I would think they would get involved. The most I have heard about was the Watcher, but that's about it. You know, I've been saying that a cool way to open Doomsday would be with the Watcher. The Watcher is such an expositional character. Even if you haven't seen What If, which many of the general audience have not, even a lot of Marvel fans have not, you open it with, I am the Watcher. I watch, and just have him explain himself. That's what he does every time anyway in What If, explains who he is, and that he watches over the multiverse. That'd be a cool way to just kind of exposition dump in a cool creative narrative way, because it's such a the Watcher thing to do. That's what he does. That'd be a cool way to open Doomsday. So I do hope we get to see like Jeffrey Wright play Uatu in the live action in Doomsday, especially. That would be cool, and it just makes sense, right? I mean, What If has been so tied in really with the multiverse saga, so why not bring him in? Astropologetic? What does Wanda's role look like in Doomsday? Alex says, all I can say at the moment is that her involvement is slightly unexpected. So I've been saying for a long time, I 100% think Elizabeth Olsen is returning to the role of Scarlet Witch, especially in Secret Wars. But yeah, I expect to see her in Doomsday as well. In fact, I think at the end of the movie is when we'll finally see RDJ's face when he unmasks himself as Doom. And I think that Scarlet Witch could be one of his Doom followers, and that she might unmask herself as well. And we see that it's the Scarlet Witch. Which Scarlet Witch? Is it the one that I think sent herself to the void at the end of Multiverse of Madness? Is it the Scarlet Witch from Universe 838? Tie that back in. Is it the Scarlet Witch from the Fox X-Men universe that we're going to be seeing? Perhaps they're, like retconning her into there somehow. We'll just have to see. But I do think she's in Doomsday, and I like hearing that it's unexpected. All right. Hi, Alex and Lizzie. Glad to be a new member. Will Steve going back to live with Peggy have similar consequences to Doctor Strange and Christine in What If? And does that set Peggy on a different path? Look above. Okay, so Alex is basically saying he already addressed that with what we talked about a little earlier. Emmy writes, are the photos that leaked of the actors in costumes legit? Thank you. Before I even read Alex's response, I'm going to say no. Let's see. I can confirm that there was a very substantial leak of Avengers Doomsday pictures during the last days of 2025. I will, however, not address their content on this page. Oh, so there was a legitimate leak. Look, a shit ton of those are AI. I was assuming like all of them were AI, but this is saying that there were some legitimate ones. I might have to go look at what leaked in the last few days of 2025, see which ones I think are real. All right, and then that brings us to the Secret Wars part of the Q&A. I'm going to do a separate video for Secret Wars, so I'll end this one there. And by the time you're watching this, I'm sure the Secret Wars one will be up either now or relatively soon. All right, thanks so much for watching. Love you guys. And yeah, I'll see you soon. Bye.